Welcome to my channel. It is Blank Arts 3D, and for this video I will be showing you how to print, process, and paint Link's Hylian Shield. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Alright, if you're new to my channel, here are all the materials that I use for post-processing my prints. Here I have my palm sander, this X-Acto knife, this toothbrush, any old used toothbrush to get the dust off from when you sand. And I also have this Bondo glazing spot putty, so to fill in like either holes or gaps or cracks in the prints. And I also have this smaller sander for the more finer details. If any the palm sander or the smaller one doesn't work, I'll just hand sand the prints myself. And I also have this dust mask. So you want to use a dust mask for when you sand your prints, because you don't want to inhale the little dust particles that come out of the prints from sanding them. And also you want to wear some eye protection just so you don't get any of the dust particles in your eyes. I also have various tapes for when I have to paint my prints. Another one right here. And then for when I do have to spray paint my prints, I use a filtrated mask so that way you don't inhale the chemicals from the prints. Also I have these paint pens that you can use for the finer details. And I have this soldering iron that I use to weld my prints together. I do have this kind of like super glue, good enough to kind of hold the prints together, and then when it's held together, then I use my soldering iron. I also have a bunch of different colored spray paints that I use. Most of them are Rust-Oleum. I really like Rust-Oleum. So most of these items I actually bought off of Amazon. But if you don't want to do that, you can also just look at local hardware stores or art stores. Okay, so for this print, I used my Creality Ender 3 Pro that I bought off of Amazon for about $200. If you have a better printer, even better. And I just use standard PLA filaments. Okay, as far as the file and where I went to go and download the file for the print, I went on Thingiverse and found this Link's Hylian Shield by 88 Fruit. There is a full shield model that you can download, and then once I downloaded the file, I took it to Mesh Mixer. I cut it into 4 pieces because my printer wouldn't fit. Just remember that there's a handle on the back, so it was easier to cut it not directly down the middle where you would cut the handle in half too. I wanted the handle to be in full pieces, so I cut it into kind of like right next to it. And then you can go on YouTube. There's tons of tutorials on how to use Mesh Mixer, but then I took it to Ultimaker Cura, and this is how it looks like. Again, I didn't use generated support. I just used custom supports. These overhangs, they're not too bad once they print out. They actually hold up just fine. Just a little bit of post-processing to smooth it out, but yeah, other than that, I just used general supports for the handles. This is how I oriented it. General supports here. Again, cut into 4 pieces. If you're not comfortable printing, because it is going to take a while, I'm using standard quality, so it does take a while to print all 4 of these because it's a pretty big file. If you're not comfortable printing all 4 at the same time, you can do one at a time, and then making sure that it comes out, it prints well. Do the next one and the next one, and then until they're all printed. Here's a preview of the file. I did use a brim to make sure that the bottom didn't warp. Okay, so here is how the prints came out. As far as detail, not too bad. Like I said, I printed on standard quality. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is I did print, like I said, I printed with brim and with the custom supports. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these out, and then we can start welding the prints together. Okay, so I'm gonna use the mini sander to clean up parts of the brim that I couldn't remove by hand, and don't forget to wear your mask and your eye protection. Okay, now that we've got the supports and the brims removed, the next thing I'm gonna do is to go over some of the overhangs that didn't print as smoothly because there was no supports. I don't know if you can see it, kind of like right there, like a few other places like here. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my soldering iron on lower heat and then just go over it slowly and smooth it out, and then should be good enough. Okay, once you got those overhangs smoothed out how you want them, then what I'm going to do next is just look for some areas in the prints that I think need some Bondo to be filled in. For example, like if you see this, trying to get the light just correctly, like right here, there's this line that I won't be able to just sand down and put some filler primer in. So I'm going to put some Bondo over areas like that to make it smoother. And then once that's done, then we're going to put all of the pieces together. Okay, so I went ahead and put Bondo in the areas that I think needed it. Again, if you have a better printer, it would definitely alleviate some of this post-processing stuff. So I think I'm going to upgrade to a better printer sometime soon myself. But yeah, now that we've got that, now the next thing is to go ahead and weld the prints together. I'm going to start with the bottom part of the shield first. I'm going to put some super glue on one side and then hold it for about 30 seconds until the glue kind of settles for a bit, so that then I can start welding. Okay, so I'm going to start with the back because the back doesn't have the details, and I'm just going to do like cross welds, cross designs, and then kind of flatten it out. So I'm going to try to show that a little bit better. Because the design isn't on the back, I like to go deep to make sure that it's actually the plastic's actually welded through, and then you can flatten it out afterwards. So I'll kind of let the soldering iron kind of dig into the plastic, make an X. Once you have that, then I kind of go back over it and try to flatten it out as best as I can, just to make sure that the plastics are joined together. And then I'm gonna do that all throughout the seam. And don't worry too much about, you know, like it being kind of bumpy and stuff. Later on we'll put Bondo over it, sand it to make sure it's, you know, it looks like it's all one part of the shield. Okay, now for the front, since a lot of details at the front, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go with kind of like light blending. I'm not gonna go as deep, and so here I'll show you what I mean. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of just like closing the seams and kind of mixing the filament together, just to make sure that the plastics are, you know, intertwined and they're mixed, and so when they harden, they're kind of joined together. And that's usually enough to kind of hold, and then same thing, we'll put the Bondo over it, make it look like it's all one part of the shield. So I'm going to go ahead and do that throughout here. The reason why I'm doing it really lightly is because I don't want to ruin the design too much. So yeah. Okay, so now that I've got that, I'm gonna put this aside and let it kind of cool off for a bit before I put the Bondo, and then we're gonna do the same thing to the top part of the shield. If you find that there are some parts of the print that's the gaps are a little bit too wide to kind of just weld together naturally, what you like, for example, here it's a little bit too big. What you can do is just get just normal filament and kind of weld it over it. Alright, just like that, get it as flat as you can. And now we've got the whole top part of the shield bonded together. One thing worth mentioning is when you get to the finer parts where it does have the details, just go slow, and you know, don't rush it to make the details as nice as you can. Okay, next step is to put top and bottom together. Same process. Okay, so now that we've got the whole shield in one piece, now just a whole bunch of Bondo to flatten it out, and then we'll get to the sanding part. For the parts that you can't reach with the blade, you're just gonna have to put a glove on and put some Bondo on your finger, and then just apply it onto the seams. Okay, so now that the Bondo has dried up, now it's time to start sanding. For the larger, flatter parts, I'm going to use my palm sander. For the top layers, I'm going to use a palm sander. And when I get towards the smaller, more finer detailed layers, I'm just going to hand sand it. A 120 grit, and then I'm going to move up to a 240 grit. And then I'm going to finish it off with a 320 grit to make it really smooth. Okay, so I'm going over the parts that were welded together, and there's kind of divots that I can still feel when I run my fingers through it, and it doesn't quite feel smooth, and it's definitely going to show up when we start priming it. So what I'm going to do is going to go over it with a second layer of Bondo, and then do the sanding process again. I'll start from 240, then we'll start the priming. Okay, so I've added the second layer of Bondo to the parts that were, that weren't so smooth. And then we're gonna go ahead and wait for it to dry again, and then resand it. The amount of time that you put into your print pretty much is the quality you'll get out of it. And I'm okay with what I have now, so now it's time to go ahead and prime it. To prime it, I'm gonna be using this 2-in-1 filler and sandable primer. And remember, when you're priming, do light layers so that way it's not runny. Let it dry. This one dries fairly quickly, about 10 minutes. So do one layer, let it dry, and then you can add a second layer, and then 2 layers is usually enough for me to be able to get my desired effect of having it look smooth. And then after 2 layers, I'll see if there's any spots that I need to go over again with Bondo. And then the good thing about this is that it is sandable, so then if there are spots that you need to go over again, you can always put Bondo over it and then resand it and then re-prime it. Now that we've got the shield primed, front and back, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start coloring. Okay, so the coloring scheme that I like to do is I like to do it in layers, always top to bottom, so that way anything that drips down can just be covered by the most bottom layer. So what I'm gonna do is these outside parts that are supposed to be silver and these parts right here, I'm gonna color it first, and I'm gonna use this metallic silver color for that. Once that's dry, I'm gonna cover it with some tape, and then I'm going to, for the bird that's supposed to be red, I'm not gonna fill it in with red. What I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna use the metallic silver on it, and then I'm gonna use this duplicolor metal cast chrome red color. So for this to work, this needs to be applied on an already metallic coat in order for it to actually look chrome red, which is why I'm putting the metallic silver on first. For the front side is the very bottom layer that's supposed to be blue. For that, I'm going to use this metallic brilliant metal finish Rust-Oleum blue coat. And I really like metallic colors because it really makes the prints look like not plastic. It makes them look like they're actual made with metal or some better quality material. For the back, since the back's not really that important, I'm just gonna go with this gloss black color for the back. You at least want it to be not wet to the touch. You don't want to leave fingerprints on it. Triforce triangles, I'm just going to use the paint pen with the gold coloring. Alright, and once the tape has been taken off, this is the final product. I would say it didn't come out too bad. If I were to make this in the future, I would definitely pay attention to the weld lines. When the light hits it just the right way, you can see this weld line in the middle. I didn't put enough Bondo and smooth it out well enough so that you can still see it. If it's far away though, not that big of a deal. So if you want just better details on it, just pay attention to that. But anyway, this is it for that video. Here's how the build came out. Subscribe to my channel to follow for more creations, and let me know down in the comments below on what you want to see me make next. You can follow me on TikTok and Instagram. Usernames will be posted at the end of the video. Also check out my Etsy store. A lot of these builds that I have will be posted on my Etsy store. If you don't want to build them, you can just purchase them. And if you do decide to build it, just tag me on Instagram so I can see how it turned out for you. Other than that, thanks for watching again, and I will see you on the next print.
Losing my sanity, I took a trip, leaving my mind. Speaking the best, and I think there's